right. So if you have a question, just line up in the audience over there. Do you have a question? All right.
I missed earlier, or I forgot, you mentioned a slight difference in what you do with IE Edge or Internet Explorer Edge and the way you process data that you think brought performance. I'm forgetting what it was, but I saw it and I wanted to get more in depth on that.
In terms of performance or in terms
Yeah,
of...
you mentioned there's a slight difference in how you process things with your rendering engine or how the new browser is going to render. And you said it gave you some performance. I forgot the name of it. Sorry, it's a little late, but I'm trying to remember what it was.
I don't recall the specific comment.
Yeah, I'm just trying to remember it, yeah.
A couple of things that came to mind listening to Doris speak. We took advantage of some of these best practices that are out there, for example, minification.
Yeah.
And we optimized around that. So our Chakra JavaScript engine, for example, actually, we looked at how people are minifying code, and the vast majority of you out there, like by far, are using Uglify. Or your libraries that you're shipping are using Uglify. So we actually built into our JavaScript engine special compiler optimizations designed for Uglify. And the reason for that is actually minifiers can break compiler optimizations because they do weird things and make the code not look like you might handwrite it. And that can actually break compiler optimization. So we worked around that and built specific optimizations for minified code. So that's like one example that I'm throwing out just because of that. But I don't remember exactly offhand the comment I was talking about. It turns out when you remove 330,000 lines of code, things do just get faster. The other piece here is that I didn't mention was we're currently, we'll ship a partway through implementation of basically rewriting our DOM under the hood, like all the internal architecture for the DOM. We expect that will have significant performance improvements. Some realized in the initial version of Edge, and some realized in updates thereafter. So we think that'll make a big difference.
I was going to ask about the DOM too. You were talking about loading them resources in the DOM. Are you going to find a way to stop like iframe security issues there? Maybe since you're rewriting the DOM.
I'm not sure what security issues you're speaking of, but like
that
we
you
have
can't
CSP is a new feature that helps you there with cross-domain and cross-site scripting.
Yeah, the iframe problems. They can't see what's coming down the wire.
Let's chat after that. It sounds like a specific question I'd like to know more about.
How will Edge ship with support for HTTP2?
Yeah. We were the first, I think, to ship it in the final state of the spec. We had Speedy 3 in IE11 actually, and HTTP2 is the final standardized version of that. So it's already there. Yeah, so hopefully, as service push that out, some of these other tips will interestingly change as we go forward. Like, sprite sheets and things like this may not be as important, but right now they are until HTTP2 kind of gets its full rollout.
Hello. First of all, thank you very much. I thought it was a great talk. I think that there's some really cool things coming from the ability to test on machines that aren't Windows. I worked in the agency world for a while, and I'm sure some other people have in this room. And I know it can be very difficult to appease clients that want to support IE 6 and 7 and 8.
Charge them a lot of money.
So I guess my question is that, and this is kind of an open-ended question. I don't know if it's something you guys can answer, but I'm just curious, I guess, more on your thoughts. So I feel like to make the next best browser, one of the things that has to come to mind is cross-compatibility between operating systems. And I think that like the tools that you guys talked about are really great to help us as developers be able to debug and fix issues, but I don't know that it's ever going to bring Edge to being the #1 browser. Not that you're going, but I think you could say the same thing for Safari, right? No one really debugs in Safari. It's just kind of one of those browsers that we go to, and some of us don't, but it works because it's very similar to Chrome. So I'm just curious on your thoughts on that.
Right, I'll get this one. So you're asking if we're bringing Microsoft Edge to other operating systems?
I'm not asking if, I'm just asking kind of what your thoughts are on that. And
The key thing that we need to focus on right now is that Microsoft Edge, for all intents, is a brand new browser. Even though we forked stuff, the bottom line is it is a lot of brand new work that we've had to do. And it's important for us to make sure that we get it right. We don't get a do-over. That's the best. That's the main thing. And there's still a lot of things that we have to add to Microsoft Edge, even after we release it on July 29th, to make sure that it works great. And so the right thing for us to do is focus on the operating system that we know best, the one that we know like the back of our hand, to make sure that it runs the right way there. Once that's done and we feel really comfortable based on telemetry that we gather, based on user feedback, that we have a solid browser, we can evaluate all different types of options. But until we get that right, putting it out there on multiple OSs, it's a tough job. If I talk about this a lot, and Google. It took 2 years for Google to create a browser. We basically did that in a year, and it's non-trivial. Creating a browser is a massive undertaking. And when that video came out and it said that the scale of work to do a browser is massive, that's an understatement. So we want to make sure we get it right. Now, will it ever happen? I never say no, because honestly, I never thought I'd see Office on an iPad. That's a pretty big deal. I never thought I'd have a MacBook and I'd be presenting it with a MacBook in front of you guys. But for right now, let's make sure that we get Microsoft Edge working really well on Windows, and then let's take a step back and look at it from there. I think that's the right approach. And in the interim, we're going to continue to give you tools to make sure that you can test effectively. We're going to try to do our best to lower the friction and get you the best possible support.
Cool. Thank you.
Sure.
Hi. First, I wanted to say it's really exciting to see all the open source things happening with Microsoft. As a .NET guy in San Francisco, you finally feel a little cool. But my question involves Windows 8 or Internet Explorer 8. You expressed hope that people would upgrade to Windows 10 from Windows 7. But the problem with 8 is that it's on XP and there's no upgrade path there. And we have a lot of customers who will not upgrade. And I was wondering if you had a kill switch for their computers that you could probably activate. And barring that, if you had any projections on the when it will die.
Yeah, it's that's a tough nut to crack, and I feel for you. And the customers you have are probably enterprise customers. I think that's the primary customers that you're talking about. The enterprises they have very unique needs. And I found that out the hard way when I came to Microsoft. I came from Mozilla, so I had the same, very much the mentality. It's like, why can't we kill IE6, 7, 8? Why can't we just knock them off and have that kill switch that you're talking about? And the thing is that, let's do a poll real quick. How many of you use Chase for banking? How many of you use, let's say, Wells Fargo? Okay. How many of you manage stocks with Fidelity or Morgan Stanley? Come on, you're in the Valley, so you guys all have stock options, all right? And and these are just some of the enterprise customers that we work with in some fashion. And so I think you guys want to make sure that your bank accounts are managed properly, that your stock portfolios are managed properly, that you get the health care that you want. And the reason I'm bringing all this up is because there's auditing processes that a lot of these enterprises have to go through. And I was just actually talking to a developer here, his name is Jonathan. He was telling me that. He was frustrated because he wants to get off of IE8, but his company won't, because that auditing process, a lot of these companies will audit specific to very specific versions of software, and to the tunes of millions of dollars. ISO 9000. Huh? ISO 9000, exactly. So it's hard for an enterprise to consider doing that re-auditing, let's say every 12 weeks. We can't push them and say, hey, every 12 weeks we're going to come up with a new browser version, and guess what? You have to re-audit your software. It's not practical. And it's also, in my opinion, when you're talking about millions or billions or trillions of dollars, I don't think it's the right choice for enterprises to be pushed in that direction. And I still feel that we are the only browser maker that has a direct focus and a direct link to the enterprise. That's why enterprises continue to want to use our browser. So we can't drop support for them. Do I want IE8 to be killed off? Yeah, because I'd make my life a lot easier. You guys would really be happy with me. But I don't want that. I want to make sure that the enterprise customer is treated equally to the consumer type of web developer. You know, if you're a .NET developer, you focus on enterprise, I'm assuming. And I think you're as important as anybody, as Tomomi, who works for PubNub. PubNub's a cool startup. It's great. Maybe she gets to work on modern browsers, and that's awesome. But to me, you're equally important because the bottom line is you may work for Chase or some other financial institution that's managing something that's incredibly important to me, and that's value. I don't ever want you to not be able to have the tools you need to be successful, or your company. So I try to paint a different picture when you guys think about the enterprise. The enterprise developer is really important. They manage a lot of things that you guys take for granted day in and day out. When you go to an ATM, that's an enterprise developer. When you go into your local food market, a big chain, whether it's Food Lion or Publix or whatever, that's an enterprise developer. So while you're building your awesome startup, that's great. And man, I hope you guys get a great exit and then you buy me an awesome dinner. But please remember that there are a lot of other developers in the enterprise that have to also build some awesome tools, and they need your support.
Hello, Jess? Yeah, there we go. So I'll add 2 specific things you can do. If you're talking with an enterprise customer and their concern for upgrading is compatibility, and it's not one of these certification cases or whatever, it's just simply, I don't know if my stuff will work because it was designed for this really old version. Tell them to check out enterprise mode. It's a feature that we built. It's totally different from document modes, if you're familiar with that. It's a higher fidelity emulation of previous versions of IE that can be made site-specific. So like just for that payroll app like I talked about before. It has an extremely high success rate. We bring in the largest enterprises out there that have like, their first problem is, oh my God, I have 40,000, or actually, I don't even know how many internal sites that I have to figure out if they work, if I upgraded. And we bring them in-house and we just sit them down with our engineers and we try out enterprise mode where they can run a modern engine on the latest web and you know, emulate an old version older on their, you know, old stuff. And it's really successful, extremely successful. So talk to them about that. And as far as the kill switch, the best thing that we had was stop sending them security updates to remind them that they're really unsafe if they're running XP. Also, another fun fact, starting January 2016, we will only support the latest version of Internet Explorer available for your operating system. So I know that doesn't help the XP case because we already stopped supporting that. But it does help you on other platforms where for some reason they're using an older version of IE than they could be.
So I have 2 questions. One, will Edge run in like Windows 7 and 8? And then the second question is actually the update and release model, right? So Chrome's on version 43, and I'm pretty confident that the majority of my users, like 99%, are on 41, 42, or 43, right? And they upgrade very frequently. With IE, it's like new version, like do, right? Everyone like goes crazy because like one version came out. Is Edge going to be different, like update more regularly and push it to the users so they update regularly, or what's kind of the plan on those things?
So Edge will be evergreen. The Insider program that I talked about, where we're shipping preview builds every so often, is really our test pilot for making sure that those version number graphs like crisscross, right? And also, I think Kiril mentioned it that the web view will also be evergreen for apps. So we've got that. We intend to keep you up to date on the latest version of Edge and not make it optional. And then the other piece is cadence. And I mentioned earlier a little bit of like us having a stronger emphasis on stability and predictability, so that when you're one of these companies that cares about anticipating, you know, a major breaking change, especially if we don't give you a choice, then we want you to be ready for that. So a couple things that we're going to do. So first step, we're going to get version 1 out the door. That's end of July. The second step is we're going to keep doing those preview builds. So sort of like how you might choose Chrome Canary versus stable or whatnot, you'll actually be able to choose a preview build branch, a train, if you will, of builds coming from Microsoft, so that you can always have the latest version, and those will keep at a fairly regular cadence. I mean, historically speaking, they've been anywhere from 4 to 12 weeks. Actually, maybe even shorter than 4 weeks in a couple cases. That's the way to get the fastest cadence. For consumers, we're still kind of figuring it out, and it'll be feature-driven rather than picking an arbitrary number. If we have a set of features that we're ready to give you, let's ship it, rather than just shipping a version on a particular cadence where, okay, because it happens to be the third Tuesday of the month, we'll have these bugs, but this feature just missed it because it could be ready next week. So we don't have a specific number that we're targeting, but you can expect tremendously faster releases than you ever saw with IE, and those will be evergreen.
So this might be a bit of a broad question, but what is the current state of support for the various web components APIs in Edge? And also, how is the Edge team working with the other browser vendors to further the development of the web component spec?
Yeah, so good question. Web components. I actually like web components a lot. I remember, what was it, 3 years ago, something like that, down the road, Santa Clara. We were in like this little tiny hotel suite, and like Dimitri, who now I guess runs the Blink engineering team, at the time he was just a developer for Chrome, and Alex Russell and I were sitting in a room, and they like pitched it, and we were like, oh, this is really cool. And so we've been working, at least in the W3C, on this standardization process for quite a while. Recently, especially given the lack of adoption across all browsers, there have been a number of issues that have come to head that we've been discussing. And so there's some changes coming down the line to some of the APIs in the web component spec. So for example, there's a CSS combinator for piercing a shadow root. That's going away. And there are other fairly substantial breaking changes that are coming. And this kind of speaks to the stability that I'm talking about. We don't want these types of changes in our features. So the other thing that's going on behind the scenes is I mentioned we're rewriting our DOM. So it turns out that if you are changing out the car's engine while it goes down the highway, you're having a really bad time. So we're in the middle of the process of rewriting this DOM architecture, and we're doing that designed explicitly to support features like shadow roots and shadow and custom elements and all of that. So it's on our short list. It's definitely on your short list. We know this from user voice. That's one of the cool things that we get, and we hope to get some of that out the door as soon as possible. I think template will probably be first on our list.
I think you implied or said that Edge would respect non-MS vendor prefixes in some cases. Is that right?
Yeah, driven by data, and it's primarily WebKit prefixes because those are what are used on the web without the standardized versions.
Isn't there like some risk that this could prevent or at least slow down the adoption of standards? Or like, it seems similar behavior of like the past 15 years of support some special things that other people are doing, but it's not done in a standard way.
Well, I think one of
And
the
is there anything to mitigate that?
Yeah, one of the good things that's happened is that Google's actually gotten on board with that. They were actually one of the first to set up an experimental flag that now pushes all the features out of vendor prefixes and puts it behind an experimental flag. That's one of the things that hopefully will try to kind of curtail some of these things that have cropped up. Vendor prefixes were actually the idea behind it was good. Unfortunately, it was dangerous because what it allowed developers to do was leave those features without any checks and balances. With the experimental flags, which we've adopted as well, and so has Mozilla, now you can continue to test these experimental features, but until they're ready for production, they're not going to be turned on. Until there's some level of consensus, they shouldn't be turned on. And that to me is a little bit better approach. It kind of prevents some of these issues from happening.
Yeah, so it's largely a correction for the problem that's already happened. So we're not just simply, okay, Chrome just shipped a prefix, so let's add it too. It's based on, holy crap, 45% of the web's using this particular WebKit prefix. Most browsers have pretty much agreed that just let's not do these prefixes anymore. We use flags. There's a cool video. Go search for the Mozilla Web Compat Summit. And there's a video, and I think like 30 minutes in, I talked about a proposal that we've been thinking about around we call API trials, which would be sort of a more future-proof, less dangerous version of getting experimental APIs out there at scale. So like if you're Netflix and you need to try out some new standard API that's experimental, about flags doesn't work for you because you only get to try it on that machine. You need to try it with 100,000 users to give us feedback into the standard process. So we're thinking about ways that let you test APIs in a safer compatibility, design. So go check out that video. It's kind of a complex thing. Go watch that out. But yeah, this is mostly about problems that have already been created and not new ones.
Yep. Thank you.